recording this webinar because we will make it available to everybody in the LinkedIn invite, and it'll be put onto our YouTube channel, so everybody who couldn't make it could digest it in good time. We are delighted that you'll be able to spare at least an hour of your valuable time. So what we've done is we've pulled together some very rich content and two really exciting use cases to demonstrate the power of robotic process automation. Just a few logistics before we kick off. The presentation will be a short introduction that I and Satendra will do. We'll then get into the meat of the presentation and a couple of use cases and demos. We will then get into some discussion with myself, Satendra, and our delivery partners. And any questions that you have, we'd like to encourage you all to actively put questions into the chat function, because myself and Satendra will pick those up, and we would like to answer them. If we can't, we have our delivery experts in Simbox and also Rishabh Software with us this afternoon, who will be able to provide some insights as well. And we'll hopefully that'll last the last 20 minutes. So we've got it scheduled for 1 hour 15, and these times are estimates and approximate. Okay. So me, I'm a digital IT transformation specialist. I've been working in technology and business for over 25 years. I've worked in public, private sector, even at the international level. I've worked in industry. I've worked as a management consultant. I have held some significant interim roles as head and interim CIO roles and head of technology roles over the last 3 or 4 years. And as you can see, there's many clients that we've worked with. I'm the managing director of Innovative Quality Solutions, and we sit at that bisector or at that interface between business and IT, trying to get IT aligned to the business agenda around digital transformation. And this afternoon, we're really looking forward to talking about RPA and some of the benefits and the value that you can get from RPA. And whilst we demonstrate some of our challenges and some of the frameworks and tools that we have from our experience of working together on this. So Chandra, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Kuldip, and thanks everyone for joining this webinar. I'm Satyendra Shrotri, based out of Stockholm in Sweden. I have over 20 years of experience working with Fortune 500 companies, delivering in the space of service integration, IT transformation, digitalization, and project deliveries. I've worked with some of the very reputed names, as you see down below on the slide, like TCS and so on. In my recent role, I was working as director and head of Center of Excellence, where I built a Center of Excellence for service integration, and was also responsible for building a business unit for ServiceNow. I have a partner ecosystem as part of my company, White Quadrant Management Consulting, where we deliver in the space of service transformation, service improvement, process improvement, service management, RPA, and digital transformation. I've worked with some of the good companies, bringing in a huge amount of experience. And yeah, that's about me.
Thank you,
Over to you, Kuldip.
Thank you. Lovely to have you here as we talk through the subject matter today. The agenda for the detailed presentation is I'm going to run through items 1, 2, and 3 in that list, as you can see. I'll do some context setting and talk about why we actually wanted to talk about RPA, because of some of the survey and technology survey results that we've seen in trends. I'll provide a little overview of RPA and some use cases and some of my experiences. And then I'm going to hand over to Satendra, who's going to talk us through items 4, 5, and 6, where we will lay out the RPA transformation framework, the maturity model, the pillars associated with that, and importantly, the business benefits from deploying RPA. And then we're going to have our delivery implementation partners, i.e. Simbox and also Rishabh Software, who are on the call with us today, as we go through two demos or demonstrations of seeing RPA in action. And then I'll wrap up with some of the key takeaways and open it up again for Q&A. Okay, some of you might have seen this slide before, but I think it's worth repeating. In a lot of my discussions with senior executives in business and IT over the last few years, the main topic that I've always talked about has been digital disruption. And when we talk about digital disruption and technology, we always get into discussion about the pace of technology adoption. And I wanted to just show you on the left-hand side what I mean by that rapid technology adoption. For example, you can see that it took 68 years to get 50 million users of the aircraft, whereas for some more recent technology deployments like Facebook and Twitter, it's taking 2 to 3 years, and even the children's Pokemon Go game, it took 19 days, sorry. So it's that rapid adoption has been increasing, and we're having to face a scenario where we're having to absorb those technology changes whilst we're changing our organizations. And what I typically see, as you can see on the right-hand side, in the graph, which depicts Martek's law, the rapid exponential rate of technology adoption is outstripping our ability to actually absorb organizational change. And that gap tends to widen with time. And what all companies have to do is reset. And my discussions then tend to lend into, well, okay, what are the kind of key 6 steps that you have to ensure that organizations become high performing, agile, if you want to say. And there's 6 things that have come to mind to me. One, making sure that the organizational design is not just a vertical functional model, but it has to be horizontally focused in a matrix way, so that you're able to build products and services and people are kind of incentivized to work cross-functional. And that also leads to making sure that you set the culture or the ways of working in terms of behaviors, so that people are delivering the value to their customers and to the business and to shareholders, stakeholders, and making sure that people are also engaged. You know, industry results that show that 70 to 80% of staff are actively disengaged in organizations, and it still remains a big challenge. Ways of working are very important. And for those of you who work in tech and IT organizations, using tech cultures like DevOps to IT service management to agile ways of working are really important, trying to get business and IT alignment around how you develop products and services in a smaller, iterative way, so there's good feedback and customer engagement as you deliver those products and services. And leadership, you need management with the right vision, strategy, and structures to lead the organization, and they need to be well governed and funded. And funding is obviously a key issue at the moment, as organizations, many organizations are struggling post-COVID, as we go for this pandemic that we're working our way through. So with that said, there are a number of technology trends that we've seen over the years, and here's just a few. You've got big data and data science emerging, data analytics. You've got Internet of Things has become prevalent, moving to cloud, multi-tenanted cloud environments to give more scalability and agility, computing everywhere. And these trends, as the rapid adoption of pace of technology adoption is increasing, impacts the business, but also impacts IT and the ability for the IT function to deliver or actually transform and deliver. And there's a distinction today that we want to bring out. Digital transformation is very much around how you can reinvent your business model or your capabilities, and then actually deploy technology innovation at pace so that you get that differentiation or that competitive advantage. And that is very different to what we are talking about today, which is digitization. Digitization, which you can see in the green circled area, is about how you improve and develop business processes and then use intelligent or automation from robotics to give you efficiency and effectiveness. And there's a distinct difference between digital transformation and digitization via RPA. And that's a really important message. And what we're going to talk about today is how you bring RPA alive, and we'll demonstrate that through our frameworks, some of the tools we have, and some of the live demos from our implementation partners. Why are you here today? Well, we've been running, I think we've done something like 8 to 10 webinars over the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And this slide here just shows you why RPA, why we're here today, really. If you see on the right-hand side, there's a little survey that we did of our senior IT stakeholder groups, and we asked them, what would you like to hear about? And as you can see at the top of the list was RPA, hence us bringing this content and material together. And on the left-hand side, you can see another survey result. This was done in April this year, just as the pandemic was at its peak, from HFC research. And what they're showing here is what are the kind of things or the technologies or initiatives that are likely to increase as we go post the pandemic or through the pandemic and out of it. And you can see cybersecurity is something on the rise, but secondly is process automation, including RPA. And what we got to the bottom right hand side is where RPA is now starting to emerge. And you can see a split across sectors, and you can see banking and financial services are the predominant sector that are using these technology and tools to bring RPA to life. And there are others such as pharma and healthcare, where I think there's going to be significant investment in technology and digital, including other sectors such as retail, if they can bring things online quicker, faster, better, and logistics and engineering and utility companies. So let's start digging into RPA. So what's RPA? Here's a definition of RPA. It is a robotic process automation, which is the application of technology that allows computer software, what we'll call the robot, to be configured to intelligently process a transaction, enhance or enrich that data quality, and communicate with other systems. And RPA is an important because it allows you to automate manual, repetitive, high volume or high value tasks that humans undertake. It gives you therefore efficiencies, it can give you cost savings, it can allow you to better manage your staff, to deploy them onto more higher value adding activities in your organization. And I think one of the key things it allows the CIO and his IT team is if we can automate business processes and manually automate those repetitive activities, it gives you more bandwidth. It allows the CIO and his team to focus on digital initiatives. And as you can see, there's a little bit of tech narrative there that describes why that can unleash that extra effort and time for the CIO to focus not just on BAU activities, more on the transformation side. A couple of a few things that I've picked up as I've been working in RPA. So what we need to really understand is RPA, it should be treated as a project. It should be treated as a change project. It's not just about the software, it's about process, and it's also about the people side. I had a project last year where the CFO took real ownership of RPA and he communicated the benefits of it. We brought in a third-party consultancy to do a proof of concept, and we're able to put a business case together and demonstrate ROI. But what he did is he didn't communicate and get the buy-in of the IT team. And that really alienated the IT team, because actually it's the IT team who are going to implement it. And so, you know, we really need to make sure that RPA is treated as a change project, it's sponsored well, and we need to make sure that we're choosing and the right processes to automate. Some of the typical candidate processes that we've come across tend to be procurement processes, HR processes, finance processes, the lower manual activities, and the other large use case that I've seen is in contact centers. And I've done quite a lot of work in local government, and contact centers are now deploying RPA so that they can carry out those manual integration data activities in the background while you're talking to a citizen or a resident around a particular issue. So it's emerged. There's lots of use cases out there, and I'm gonna now hand over to Satendra, who's going to talk about how we go about setting up an RPA project.
Thank you, Kuldip. Thanks for that nice introduction and setting the context. So let us look back before we look ahead. Obviously, not lingering too much in the rear view mirror, but before we drive ahead, let's look back and see how the business demand has shaped IT in the last 30 years, as we probably have seen. 30 years back, the primary focus of the IT department was basically enabling some parts of business, doing some small tasks, and it was task-based use of computers, not too much of computing as such, converting records into digital form and so on. Primary area of focus was cost saving. And IT was always as another supplier or another provider to the business. In just a decade's time, the business did realize that yes, IT can deliver cost saving, but they can also be very flexible. They can give us the business flexibility that we need to drive our products and services in the marketplace. And that is where there was also a lot of development and improvement happening on the IT side, and the need on the business side was also growing. And that is where we saw there was a lot of outsourcing, core sourcing, and all sorts of sourcing models came up, where the primary area was outsourcing verticals or silos to a supplier who is best in that class, which is basically a supplier who is good in infrastructure. You would like to have that particular supplier as your infrastructure supplier. This went on, as we know, for a couple of years. And then by 2014, 2015, you would have seen a lot of discussions about flexibility, agility, faster time to market. In these last 20 years, from 90s till 2015, people had seen a lot of challenges on the IT side because of disparate systems that don't communicate to each other, having the integrations running point to point as spaghetti all over the IT landscape. And it was becoming more and more challenging to manage this IT landscape from application, infrastructure, service desk, network, and all of these silos. The business was still looking at higher degree of agility and flexibility. And that is where we moved into this space of managed services or managed business processes. And business was looking at IT as a business partner. Since 2018, 2020, we are seeing more and more businesses are looking at IT as not just an IT who is enabling their business, but actually driving the business with them through omni-channels, through different initiatives in the digital space with your mobile apps. Obviously, all of this was founded on the very strong foundation of the technological advancement that was happening on the core technology side of higher processing power, higher memory, compute power that was significantly huge as compared to what it was in the 90s. So there was technological advancement leading to a lot of advancement in the service and products space, leading to a lot of business doors being opened for the businesses in the same marketplace. Obviously, the user demand was changing. And if you look at this time zone from 2014, or rather 2012 to now, you will see more and more of these business services as platforms that have come up, which is SAP has been there for the last 30 years, but now you have SAP for HANA, you have Workday for human capital management, you have various financial platforms for managing a company's financial needs. You have ServiceNow for managing the service management. And these are all huge platforms. They are no more small applications. They are no more point solutions. These are platforms. And this is precisely the space where a lot of digitalization is going to happen, which is going to drive a lot of agility and business value, because it is much easier. Businesses have understood over time that it's much easier to keep things in a standardized way, which will help them drive upgradation, which is much easier, standard ways of working with industry best practices incorporated. And now I think is a time which is very ripe for digitalization to kick off, significantly driving business value. So Kuldip, if you can go to the next slide. And here you will see there are these pillars of RPA, and which also drives a certain degree of complexity when we are trying to leverage RPA for business benefits, for driving efficiency and effectiveness. As you saw on the first slide with Martek's law, there are these dimensions, which is business process and value streams, people and culture of the organization, IT processes and technology, partners and suppliers, and obviously measurement and maturity. All of this driven by your organizational strategy and governance, founded on your organizational policies, frameworks, and guidelines that actually keep you, help you keep the course as you drive change. So when we look at this is more of a transformation journey on a new path of digitalization. We cannot leave the business processes out. We cannot leave the people out. We cannot leave the IT processes. So we, as change owners, the primary focus that I feel we should have is from all of these dimensions, running this huge change program for a customer organization. We have to understand which are the business processes that are the key business processes which will drive significant amount of value if automated. There could be some areas which are key from your regulatory and compliance perspective, some of them key from governance perspective. Obviously, you will have some of the areas which will have to be measured on not only the performance of applications, but also supplier performance and those aspects. So I think when you look at this entire change, we have to look at from these different paradigms and how this change can be driven in a customer organization. Every single customer organization will have a different mix of suppliers, will have a different organizational culture, and will have a different strategy. So no two RPA or digitalization implementations are going to be same. They can have similar challenges to certain degrees, but every new implementation I have seen throws in some new challenges that you have never encountered. But they all come from these key 7 spaces that you see on the screen. Next slide, please, Kuldip. So when we look at the RPA framework, we look at these 6, 7 key areas, which becomes the very core of your framework. That is understanding your organizational strategy and governance, IT processes, understanding business processes, understanding the maturity of people and culture, your measurement and maturity models prevailing in the customer organization, and then obviously what are the organizational policies, guidelines, and frameworks that are used to deliver IT services towards the business. When we do this, the key focus is going to be on the business case and the ROI. Obviously, what we do here is We assess, we define what needs to be implemented, we build and implement that, and then we improve. But while doing this, we look at each of these 7 spaces or 7 pillars from a maturity perspective as to how mature is your organizational strategy. Do you have an organizational strategy that directs and gives direction for digitalization? Do we have the right governance controls in place for these initiatives? Because these initiatives cannot be run by the IT alone. These initiatives for RPA typically they go hand in hand with business, because we are talking about automating business processes. Business knows what are their pain points. Business also knows which are their critical processes, which could be automated by IT. And as Kuldip said earlier, we cannot drive this as a business project alone. You cannot drive this as an IT project alone. It has to go hand in hand with roping in the partners and suppliers, because they bring in key competencies which probably are not prevailing in the organization, or probably the organization is not able to scale it, which the suppliers will help us scale on demand. Then we look at the IT processes and the technology, which means what are the type of technology solutions we have, what is the enterprise architectural guidance for certain platforms, for certain technology. Do we adhere to only Microsoft, or we have a mix? What is that mix? Are there any well-defined architectural standards that we should be adhering to, and so on and so forth. So when we look at the entire journey, this framework that we have talks about assessment, definition, implementation, and improvement. Now we have to remember all of these frameworks, they always have external factors that play a significant role, which could be social factors, regulatory and compliance factors, economic factors, computational factors, and so on. As we all have seen, due to the COVID situation that we all are in, it has 2 dimensions for any industry that you talk about. It could be regulatory or security sort of factors that throw up different challenges. It could be economic factors, because a lot of organizations and the CIOs are under tremendous pressure to cut down the operational costs, but still deliver to the business and keep the lights on. Not only keep the lights on, but also plan for the next 3 years, which itself today is a challenging situation for the CIO organization, not knowing what's happening ahead. And this is precisely the space where the RPA framework comes into picture, because then we have key parameters measured, and we have a data-driven decision that we can arrive at, and not on the hunches that, okay, if we do this RPA, then we will have this sort of savings, or it will improve the efficiency. No, we look at all of these different parameters and then come up with which are the business value streams that can be automated. Because we have to understand one key fundamental that comes not from RPA, but comes from business process management and business process automation is, and primarily the lean fundamentals, is when we look at any business process, we try and identify what is the waste within this business process and eliminate that waste to make that process more lean. You have to identify what are the value add activities and the non-value add and the essential non-value adds, so that the essential non-value adds probably can be automated, which could be something like compliance. It may take some time, but yes, it is essential. It's not directly adding value, but indirectly it provides you with a lot of information. Compliance to certain standards gives you access to certain markets and certain services. Also on the pure business side, we know that most of these business processes that we have today have been there since long, 20 years, 30 years. Very few organizations have revisited the business processes. They have been using it because I go in, I start using it. I don't actually have the time and the bandwidth to revisit whether this process can be made more efficient. This RPA framework gives you a fresh opportunity to look at your business processes, to understand whether these business processes can be made more efficient, because there is no point automating waste. So you have to eliminate the waste and then automate whatever are the repetitive tasks, whichever it could be. It could be about enriching the data. It could be about compliance. It could be about automating certain interfaces and so on. The primary concern and the primary focus of this framework is identifying which are the key processes, as we call them, as candidates for automation. Go ahead, Kuldip. So what you see here is a RPA maturity model, which will help an organization plan their RPA journey. Now, I am using this word journey because though you can treat it as a project, and in your agile way of working, you can run in different sprints and so on, you need to very well understand this is a journey. You don't achieve this in 2 months, in 3 months, in 6 months. You can achieve significant outcomes in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, only if you know what your end destination is, what is your path to that destination, what are the turns and challenges that you will see on those turns from these key dimensions, which is IT processes, people, technology, and business processes. So when we look at the maturity of any organization before we start on an RPA journey, we look at these 4 dimensions. We have a very well defined maturity model defining what should be the parameters which, when validated, would land an organization at level 1 or level 2 or level 3 and so on. These have been defined as initial, reactive, proactive, managed, and optimized. So ideally, organizations would like to move from reactive to optimized. And as you see here, I'm not going to read it through. It's very self-explanatory, and I will leave it there for you to consume for a couple of minutes. It moves from consolidation to agility on the people and IT processes side, and it moves from controlled or best effort to innovative on the technology and the business processes side. So the best combination is basically agility and innovative, which means your IT processes are very agile, your IT organization is very agile to the business needs, and the business is co-creating value with IT in the innovation space. But I think to reach there is a journey that any organization has to go. There could be some frog leaps that you could do depending on the maturity of your IT processes, maturity of the people, the change an organization can adopt and adapt to, because we have to remember at the very core, this is organizational change, which means it's a mindset change, which means it's a change of ways of working, which means there is a life cycle to adoption, which means there is going to be some resistance, there is going to be some degree of conflict, and then you go ahead, people adapt it, and then adopt it, and that is where it becomes a new way of working. So this journey has to be done with someone who can handhold the customer organization on this journey. You have to continuously have a very strong commitment from the leadership and the management. There has to be continual communication across the organization so that the energy of the organization stays up. Because after first 6 or 8 months, there is some amount of fatigue that comes in any change program. To revitalize that and negate that fatigue, there are organizational change management methods that need to be applied. So this is not only about RPA, this is about looking at the business processes, improving the business processes, and then automating it. And you do it in sprints. Obviously, you take some of the low-hanging fruits first so that the business as well as the IT sees the benefits, which also helps in negating the fatigue. Because if you're continuously working on something with no outcome, with a promise that the outcome will come after 2 years, I think 1 year on, people will start falling off the journey, and they would like to be on their own journey into something else. So for people to be kept focused, we have to use this maturity model to continually measure how the maturity of the organization on these 4 parameters has been improving. What are the areas where we need more effort? So this is a maturity model that we have used significantly, and we know this works, this delivers. Yes, if we can go to the next slide, please. So the very first right step in the right direction on the RPA journey is about finding which are the right candidates that need to be automated. So we look at it from organizational readiness, technological readiness, and strategic readiness, which also includes readiness from a strategy perspective, governance, partners and suppliers, organizational readiness from people, people awareness, trainings that need to be imparted, and obviously technological readiness, which is do you have the right platforms in place? Do you have the right technological skills that can be leveraged? So with the help of this, we identify which are the right candidates for automation. And then those are the low-hanging fruits, which actually, this is the journey which helps us define the actual roadmap aligned to your strategy, understanding these key parameters of what I call as the PPPT, which is people, process, partners, and technology. So a well thought through approach to arrive at the right starting point, knowing which is the right direction that we should be heading. I think that's the very first crucial step in this journey. Otherwise, you are going to either automate waste, and most of the RPA initiatives we have seen not delivering or under delivering results, because it starts with a back office project, somebody getting a small team together, starting to automate something. Yes, you automate that, but it doesn't actually deliver value, because you never in the first place measure whether that was the right thing to do, whether that was the right process to automate, whether in the first place that process was needed or not, because that was probably something that was there since last 15 years, no more needed today. Maybe you could have eliminated that and then made the entire business process more agile, and that was the first step of improvement, and the next second step would have been actually automation. So I think understanding where you start is the key. Yes, go ahead. So what we do in this framework as a first step is do the assessment. So as part of the assessment, here is the high level view. You have the maturity model against which we are going to assess and find out where the organization stands from these 4 dimensions. The way we do it is we plan, obviously, which means we engage with the key stakeholders within the customer organization, the business process owners. We identify whether business process owners are there in the first place. If not, we identify those owners with the help of the customer. We engage with the customer team, understanding various dimensions, right from organizational strategy to governance to who are the suppliers in what space, what are their key strengths, and so on. Then we have an assessment framework on which we assess the maturity. We analyze that, and then we present it back to the customer as our high-level findings and a detailed report, followed by a roadmap as to what should be your roadmap, which are the things that you should be doing first, and then things that will give you early benefits, which are the suppliers that you should be leveraging, and so on. So that's the very first step in identifying where the journey starts. Yes, please go ahead to the next step. Next slide. So having said this, you would have seen or read about a lot of RPA initiatives failing. And on the left-hand side, as you see, there are some of the reasons that we have. As I said, earlier, you have a wrong choice of what to automate. You haven't revisited the entire business process end to end, and then zooming into certain areas. There is lack of a long-term RPA strategy. There is lack of commitment from the leadership and the senior management. Maybe the IT team gets excluded. You're moving too fast on this change journey, so you change and you leave it there, and it falls apart. And obviously, having unrealistic or expectations that are way above from what an organization of that size can achieve on this change journey. It's good to have high expectations, but it is very important to have realistic expectations. And again, all of these are from people, process, partner, and technology perspective. When we try and tip the scales towards success, I think the key areas that I have seen that actually drives these projects as successful projects is educating the employers and the employees as to what the robot is going to do, what it is not going to do. Is it going to steal your jobs? Are there going to be FTE reductions? How do we do redeployment of those FTEs? Having strong involvement from partners and the IT, having a well-defined RPA strategy, having RPA sponsors, not only from IT side. So the CIO obviously will be one of the sponsors, but having key sponsors from the business side, because those are the people who are going to actually give you insights into the business processes, and they are the people who are going to see more benefits than what IT is going to see. People requirements, which means identifying the right roles and responsibilities, knowing some of the roles are needed, but they are not staffed. So taking action on that, identifying responsibilities across your partners, suppliers, your key suppliers, and your CIO organization. And then obviously, as I said, the primary most important thing is finding out which are the right processes to automate. So there are some indicative savings that we see on this slide here. I will address them on the upcoming slides. Kuldip, if you could go to the next one. So what are the benefits of RPA? You see in the background there are these maturity levels that we saw earlier. Obviously, as an organization gets more mature on the dimensions of people, process, business processes, technology, and so on, the benefits are going to be higher. Having said that, it does not mean you don't have benefits when you are operating at lower or the medium maturity levels. Those are going to be there because that gives you a lot of bandwidth to improvise, to run improvement initiatives on various aspects, right from business process aspects to IT. It gives you a lot of cost saving and value. You have resource optimization that can be done not only, and when you talk of resources, it's not people resources, it can be also IT resources and business resources. It drives effectiveness, standardization of business processes, which is one of the key reasons for having a lot of IT systems that are disparate, a lot of IT systems that have very poor quality of data that is captured because there is no standardization of business processes across geographies. And you will typically see this in larger organizations spread across a wider geographic space. Global organizations, each geography has their own way of doing certain parts of the business process. So that adds a lot of challenges. And then when you standardize these business processes, obviously standardization does not mean casting it in stone. It can have some 5 to 10% of variation depending on the local needs, but at least at a very high level, you know what the business process is, and there is certain degree of predictability that you get out of that. You have Data hygiene, because of RPA, you can automate a lot of data aspects, data enrichment, data quality control, and so on. You can have operational assurance. You will drive a lot of efficiency and productivity leveraging RPA, because you're going to automate certain tasks which are performed now manually, which leaves a huge potential for errors to creep in, because as you do repetitive tasks, it is well known as human behavioral challenge that humans are not made to do repetitive tasks. The more repetitive tasks you do, it leaves a gap for the errors to creep in. That is not a challenge with RPA. It can scale up very fast and do, instead of 1,000 transactions, it can do 1,000,000. Today, the technology with cloud platforms gives us that scalability and robust architecture to drive a bot and scale that bot. Finally, not the least, agility. It gives you a lot of agility from business to IT speed to deliver something very fast to the businesses. Obviously, this has also a lot of less work or rework that it causes. Over to you, Kuldip, now.
Thank you, Satendra. Thank you for being so thorough and detailed. We're now going to move into section 7, where we're going to walk through a couple of demonstrations, and we're delighted to have Simbox as our first delivery implementation partner to focus on a BPM / RPA case study. And then we have Rishabh Software, who have also joined us. From Simbox, we've got Matt Green on the call, Sadiq Murali, and also Hersha, the COO. So we're absolutely delighted that they're here with us. Let me just tell you a little bit about Simbox. Simbox are an enterprise integration and process management software specialist. They have significant experience in business process management, whilst being agnostic on the RPA technology solutions. They operate in the UK, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and have strong presence in media, entertainment, broadcasting, and telecoms sectors. Their platform that they've developed is of low code, no code, and they orchestrate their solutions via APIs and then enable RPA to enact the manual processing of low-level tasks. And I'm going to now hand over to Matt, who's going to take us through the demonstration. The demonstration here in this case is around collecting sales opportunities via a CRM system, registering them, and then taking them all the way through to invoicing. And you'll see Matt talking through that process to the stage where the bot actually enacts those manual activities. So Tendra, I'm going to ask you to just make sure that you can hear the recording as we go through it. Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Hello and welcome to a Simbox Automation.
Yes, I can hear you.
Today we'll be taking you through a demo scenario. So this demo scenario starts off at the CRM, where the sales team and the customer have agreed and want to proceed with the order. Simbox will integrate via API into the CRM to retrieve those approved opportunities. Then we'll create a customer onboarding workflow instance for each one of those opportunities, present validated forms to relevant teams in order to input further details, and then we'll actually trigger a RPA process, a robotic process, in order to create an invoice on the Xero Finance platform. So this demo scenario is actually based off of real life scenario, and the customer previously was performing all of these tasks manually. So the handoff between the CRM the team actually entering the order details, fleshing out the order details, if you like, was all manual. So the manual handoff between the sales and solution architect there. So it was emails being sent out and phone calls happening. You'd often get inconsistencies between the data and the quality of the data was suspect. And you would have a manual handoff to the billing team, who would then create the invoices as well. And then they'll have to spend the time and create the invoices themselves on Xero. And with any manual processes, errors can be made, which increase the iterations of attempts. And then also the delay between the billing teams and the order team to create the invoice, because they might not be immediately available. So the values which Symbox added by having our automated process sit on top of this is that we're able to track, so we're fully fledged workflow where everyone's able to see what's going on at all the times and have error handling around that. We had the automation of all the handovers from sales technical through to billing. We're able to drive out the performance management, so set SLAs against these manual tasks. I provide digital interfaces, so structured, ensuring that the data coming into Symbox was correct and validated, which reduced the risk of manual errors going into the invoices. We automated the trigger of the robot, so there's no delay within. And all of this ensures that we have accurate invoices from the first cycle, and the workflow is visible across the entire organization. So what we'll do now is actually log into the Symbox platform. So Symbox is fully web accessible, so there's no need to install any applications to the client side. What you're seeing here is us initiating the app that we've created within Symbox. And already it's kicked off and called the CRM HubSpot via API and retrieved back the details of the approved opportunities. This is the process diagram behind that app. And you can see there, that's the first activity, and it's calling the HubSpot opportunities. So that's actually an outbound connector which has been configured on Symbox. All of our APIs, both inbound and outbound, are done via configuring on Symbox rather than developing. So I'll show you the configuration behind this one. So you can see here, you have the different sectors. So you can configure different authentications, different headers, different parameters, path segment, body. And when you configure it, you can actually use static values, or you can actually use dynamic values from the Symbox data model. So dynamic values might be a value that has been retrieved from another API, or it might be a value which has been entered in the Symbox via form. Here we've just tested the API, so you can see the JSON that's returned. So if we step back into our process, you can see these are the approved opportunities, and we're going to onboard them. And what that will do is actually spawn off sub-processes, which is the custom onboarding process for each instance. If we jump into active apps, you can see 2 instances within the app list there. And this is one of the manual tasks, which the solution architects will actually be taking care of. So they're presented with the data from the API, from HubSpot of the order. Then they're asked to fill in additional data on this form. And the form's actually again created on Symbox using the low-code form builder on Symbox. With this form builder, you're able to create an interface which will validate the data the user's inputting. We see our custom onboarding workflow here. You can see that now the task will move to the second task, which is for the billing team. Again, they're asked to provide additional data on this order. And then once they do that, they're actually able to kick off the robot. And that will kick off the robot. So we'll be passing the data of that particular order through to the RPA process. And we've got a flow for success and a flow for error. So let's have a look at the robot in action then. So the robot's been passed the data by the BPM. This is the order data retrieved from HubSpot and then added to via the users. And then it's inputting it in Xero. One thing to note here with Symbox, we're actually agnostic in terms of RPA partner. In this example, we're actually using UiPath. The robot's entered details into Xero, and now it's actually going to create the invoice. And then it will return the invoice back to Symbox. And now what we're seeing here after that is the verify invoice. So this is the manual task at the end for the commercial team to come in and actually view the invoice that the robots created. So you can see here, this is the invoice that's been created. They get the final say to say whether it's approve or reject. And if they're happy, it'll send to the customer. So what I would like to do now is talk about the benefits that implementing a solution like this could offer to you. So at the top here, we've got the business benefits. And you can see that we've got 97% reduction in process cycle time. So this is by implementing end-to-end process orchestration. We have customers which have taken months, if not going into years, processes, and we've reduced that into days. And likewise, we've got customers which have taken hour-long processes, and we've reduced that to minutes. We've got an 82% improvement in data quality by implementing our digital forms. That's a low-code form builder. We've got a threefold work capacity created from existing team by implementing the process automation. So that's using APIs and RPA to free up your existing team. This coupled with the fact that humans work 8 hours for 5 days a week compared to a robot working 24/7. We've got a 96% reduction in admin work, again by implementing APIs and RPAs, so taking those manual tasks away from users and freeing them up. At the bottom, you've got the IT benefits of implementing something along these lines. So we've got a 10 to 20 times faster build time to go to production. This is in comparison to creating a similar solution from the ground up in a pure software development cycle. And you've also got the benefit that because it's low code, you can actually get citizen development. So you can actually get members of your own organization to build. And this will reduce your costs by 30 to 50%. And then also just because you've got your citizens involved in the development, you get greater business adoption because the stakeholders are on hand every day, and the people who know the business process are actually creating the business process on Simbox.
Thank you, Matthew, for that. I hope you've had everybody's had a good chance to absorb that. As I said, we'll have the recording available to people to watch that again, but I hope it sort of demonstrates how you can use UiPath and RPA to automate back-end manual invoicing tasks. I'm going to move on to Rishabh Software, who are going to take us through a quick demo of their use case. A little bit about Rishabh. Rishabh are a software development and infrastructure cloud computing digital services organization based in India, but they have offices in London and Sandhu. And they have done hundreds of projects. They have 600 plus in employees. And they, as you can see, there's a variety of service offerings they have in the IT, digital analytics, DevOps infrastructure space. And we're delighted that Sapna and Mubin and the Rishabh team are here with us, helping us support this webinar. We're going to hand over to Satendra again, who's going to walk us through this use case. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kuldip. So the use case that we have here from Rishabh Software is automated timesheet compliance, reporting and integration to invoicing. This is, as you saw, there is Rishabh Software, who has hundreds of customers, 600 plus employees, and primarily when you are working on customer projects, you are going to bill the customer for the amount of efforts that you have put in on certain projects, and they have to be precise. And what we have is a business process where the timesheet gets logged by the employee. So what you have here is an employee who is going to get a reminder at probably end of the week and end of the month, he logs into the system, he records his timesheet as the effort on different projects that he has been working on. It makes a compilation of that and sends it to the project manager. The project manager spends hours together to verify, check whether there are any errors, there are any under-reporting, over-reporting, and all those aspects, and have the reported efforts on a public holiday by mistake on a Saturday, and so on. And then he identifies the errors and sends those back to the employee. The employee makes the corrections in the timesheet, and then it goes further ahead from the project manager to the invoicing system. The invoicing system creates the invoices and sends it to the customer billing and invoicing system. Now that's all of it done manually, taking significant amount of efforts from the employee, from the project manager, as well as someone within the project finance who would be actually validating and sending this information as invoices to the customer. Now, when we look at it, when an RPA has been deployed, which is basically a bot has been deployed, and this is automated timesheet, you have the employee who obviously has to fill in his timesheet. That cannot be automated. And then you have the timesheet that gets recorded. The bot actually does the compilation from different projects, understanding what projects this particular employee has been working on, checking for discrepancies, error identification, and then obviously collaborating with the user, saying you have filled in, say, probably there is a mistake of filling in some 1 or 2 hours on a Saturday where that was a holiday. So the user gets a notification to make changes to the timesheet. The user makes those changes, re-verification happens, and then data enrichment happens for client details, the billing cycle, the billing date, and all those sort of things that we know are typically manually done is also now enabled over a bot, and then that gets sent as an invoice to the customer's invoicing system. So all of this manual effort has been now eliminated and has been done by the bot, which means a huge amount of bandwidth has been released for the project manager to do actual project management stuff and not do repetitive tasks in checking timesheet and identifying where are the discrepancies and where there are some compilation errors and so on. So if you could go to the next slide. Yes, so what we have here is high manual effort for managing and monitoring and consolidating timesheets. As a part of the solution feature, what was deployed there was a bot. If you can go ahead, Kuldip.
Yep.
Yeah. Was a bot which would take care of volumetric compliance, taking care of 14 departments plus of information for timesheets, creating HTML-based reports integrated to your emailing system, which would send emails, automated emails from the bot to the user, which is basically the employee, as well as the manager for information and for compliance. Retraining, helping people not commit those mistakes over time. This bot is highly customizable. You can run it daily, weekly, monthly, or an ad hoc run if required. And then the benefits, obviously, where manual intervention was eliminated. There was 70% reduction in execution time, achieved 40% FT reduction, and this project is still live, which we are expecting around 75% further reduction. Is an efficient, standardized way of generating a report across the organization, which means the reports are color coded. Color coding for non-compliance, color coding for having errors on public holidays. The bot can be fed with information for different geographies, which is public holidays for different countries, for different time zones, and so on. So this is a very interesting implementation where you have 8+ geographies covered, 8+ countries covered, with having different time zones, having different public holidays, customers having different invoicing requirements, some of them having bi-weekly, some of them having once in 2 weeks, some of them having monthly at the end of the month, and this bot can be customized. Obviously, this is scalable. It eliminates huge amount of manual effort. The project manager team was one of the team who had the widest and the brightest smile on their face when this was implemented and put to practice.
Sure. And
Yeah,
what we'll do now, Satendra, is just get that, show that bot in action. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Here we go. Tell me if it's everybody, if you can see it, Satendra.
Yes.
Yeah. Ready?
Yeah. Yes, we can see it. So what you have here is basically different departments, and then you have different owners for those departments. This is the entire process for the bot. You have the Excel sheet, and here is the bot in action. The bot execution has started now. It takes information from the Excel sheet for so you see there on row 7, there's someone who has missed 2 days of time reporting. This is the email that gets generated. So it integrates with your Exchange server, reports generated in HTML format, very easy to read and understandable, with clear actions identified. It could be done, as I said, on a varied frequency. You can customize it. It goes to every team manager and so on. So you can even customize who gets the report. Here is the runtime. Here is the runtime. You can see that in the tasks. So that's the demo of the bot getting executed. Thank you, Kuldip.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic use case there from Rishabh, well articulated by Satendra. What I'm going to do now, guys, is kind of wrap this up in this key takeaways from this webinar, and then open it to Q&A. And just before I do that, if you do have any burning questions, please do put them on the chat function, and we'll try to address them after I've completed the key takeaways. So some of the key things that we've kind of hopefully shown and demonstrated to everybody this afternoon is that the RPA maturity model is there as a tool. It helps organizations to articulate where they are, where they want to go, using the digital maturity model as that enabler, helping the definition of the RPA strategy and roadmap, which then actually supports the IT transformation journey, which also aids and supports the digital transformation and the digitalization that the organization wants to go on. We've spent a number of years developing that assessment methodology, and it really it has helped many organizations to understand where they are and where they want to go. It can give, RPA can give, if implemented correctly, identifying the right candidates, as we talked about, understanding the people, process, and change dimensions, and the social and economical factors that affect the change that the organization is looking for. It's really important that that you can demonstrate through a business case the return on investment from RPA. I hope you've seen through our use cases that RPA is real, it's alive, it gives you FTE cost savings, it can give you the efficiency, the effectiveness, it can help focus your staff in other areas that you need for higher value activities, but it does require blending and a working of business and IT together. These are organizational change projects, they're not standalone projects. And as I said at the beginning of the talk, RPA can automate manual tasks that are repetitive, of low value and high volume, or high value, low volume tasks. And it really drives business process and IT process standardization. And that therefore allows you to achieve the internal audit or the regulation framework standards that you might want, and helps reduce manual error because, like I said, a robot can work 24/7, whereas a human can't. And if it's a humans doing the task on a repetitive basis, it tends to become more prone to error. And my final final statement on this is that, as I said, making sure that not only the business and IT work together, but you really sometimes need external support and partners. They could be advisory partners and delivery partners who can actually bring this to life. And a final slide, just to wrap this up. We are not just the advisory and delivery side, but we've also got a lot of experience in utilizing a lot of that kind of process standard frameworks out in the marketplace, from Agile, Safe to COBIT to Scrum type, ITIL based, DevOps based process frameworks that can give you that starting point in process standardization, and therefore allows us to help you develop what are the candidates for RPA, and therefore what the proof of concept could look like and a business case to wrap around it. I'm conscious of the time and I've rattled through that very quickly. I do want to open it up to Q&A. If you do need to contact us, here are our contact details, but for myself and Satendra, are there any questions? I'm just going to have a quick look at. Okay. Okay. There's a question for Simbox here.
Yeah.
So I was, if you want to pick up the question, and I'll try to get Matt.
Okay, so here's the first one. I think, are there processes where RPA just simply doesn't work? Kuldip, if you don't mind, I would like to take that on.
Yep. Hold on a second. Hold on, Satendra. Can you come off mute?
Yep. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yep, great. Go for it.
I think for that question about which other processes that RPA doesn't work. Yes, obviously there are many processes where RPA would not work, primarily where you need a lot of intellectual decision making that is not part of documented process, or something that cannot be automated and needs manual intervention. Yes, there are so many processes within finance, which could be your taxation processes, which is not just taking tax off the invoice, but overall organizational taxation space. There are spaces within retail where automation cannot be applied. So each industry will have a lot of these processes where automation is not possible, and it's because of some reason where you need manual intervention, because you can only automate something that is repetitive. Yes, though you may be able to build over time some artificial intelligence around that, which is depending on what sort of information, historical data, behavioral patterns, all those sort of things bringing together. But yes, to answer your question, yes, there are processes which cannot be automated using RPA.
And that's right. And just to echo that, if there's a human intervention required in that process, the RPA just won't work. I'm sorry, that's a blunt answer, but that's true.
Absolutely. Then let's come to the next one. Curious about the Simbox case. Thank you. There are various interfaces between HubSpot and Xero. Why was RPA-based approach applicable rather than an existing interface? So, Mats, you or someone from your team can take that one.
Yeah. Herse or Matthew?
Matthew.
Matthew, I've tried to take you off mute.
Yeah, maybe you can take everybody off mute.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yes, Matthew.
Matt's still on mute, I believe.
He's still on mute.
Okay, I'm trying to get him off. It should be okay now.
Unmute from your side, Matthew. Try.
Yeah. There you go. Can you do that now, Matthew?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay.
So I felt like my liberties were taken away from me there.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a very good question. So essentially, the reason why we've got there are interactions that you can do between Xero and HubSpot and other CRMs, indeed. But essentially, why we've done that for the customer was because they wanted a middle step of the billing team and solution architects in order to kind of flesh out the details of the order. And indeed, they actually wanted the workflow actually continues beyond there. So that's just the first part of that. So that's why it was kind of done with that. And then in terms of using API and robotics or API or RPA, it's essentially a choice that we make given every situation. So one will be better if we have in our toolkit, and based on the situation, we'll use one or the other.
Hopefully thank you.
Yeah. Coming to the next question, in your maturity model and framework, I could not see any mentioning of the customer impact, that is direct mentioning of customer touch points, all of which may not be captured by the existing manual process or impacts on CX measures. How do you view this? So, Christer, yes, good question. The maturity model takes into account the business processes, the complexity of the business processes, the interfaces within business processes, and those aspects, geographic spread, number of users, and all of that, which actually gives us a direct view of the customer impact. So, this maturity model that you saw, it talks of people, process, technology, and business process. When we look at the business process, it does talk about basically all these dimensions, which is basically the impact to the customer, the business processes, the interfaces, the complexity, geographic spread, and so on.
Okay, thank you, Satendra. I've got a question that I'd like to ask the Rishab team to answer. It's a tough one, but it's the question from Matthew, where he's asking, what's the difference between RPA and data science? And then maybe I can extend that a little bit. Maybe Sapna, you can pick this one. Difference between traditional automation, RPA automation, and data science, which is the next stage. Sapna, are you there? I'm going to try to make sure you...
Sapna? Yeah, he's unmuted now.
Yep.
Hi, thanks, Kuldip. Yeah, I'd like to take that question. So, I mean, traditional RPA, right, versus, the intelligent RPA, what we say. So cognitive RPA leverage artificial intelligence technologies such as OCR, text analytics, and machine learning to support the automation of more complex business processes. In the machine learning, the automation process has the ability to learn, expand, and continually improve certain aspects of the functionality on its own. Unlike traditional RPA supports automation based on structural data, whereas cognitive RPA takes care of further automation processes that include unstructured data, including like scanned documents or say emails or letters or voice recordings. So that's the kind of the advanced RPA using the data science.
Okay, thank you, Sapana, for that. I'm going to go back to Simbox. This is a question from AG. Simbach, is it able to interact with Xero modern cloud solutions via API, i.e. bypassing the web interface? Matthew or Hersa, do you want to take that one again? And are you off mute? Yeah, there we go. You should be okay now, Matthew.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I like the way you're thinking there as well, because our aim is to fully, when we're dealing with a customer, is to fully automate as much as possible. So I think what you're thinking along the lines is not have that manual touch point of people logging in and seeing the data, adding to it. And that's 100% something that Symbots can do. So that flow, if users weren't required to add in additional data, that could all be automated, and you wouldn't be aware of it, and you could just have a user interface to have reporting on top of it to see what's going on. So yes, we could essentially do that.
Okay. I'm now, yeah, is there, I know we've run over by at least 7 minutes, which I think is a good sign.
Yeah,
that means we have plenty of
absolutely.
content, and richness in use cases. I'm going to have a last call for any last final question. Anybody? Maybe a question for the Rishab team. I have a final question for the Rishab team. I wonder if you could tell us, Sapna, about the current project. How long did it take to configure and get the robot developed and working so you could do the time reporting really effectively and efficiently? I was wondering if you could share some more insight into that.
Yeah, you could unmute Sapan. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Kuldip. So I understand that you're asking about the process that we demoed in terms of the timesheets. So how much time it took, right? Just to be sure. All right. I mean, it takes for such kind of processes, which I consider as a medium or a simple category, for us, it takes typically, 4 to 5 weeks to develop such kind of simple processes. Or medium kind of processes generally takes to 4 to 6 weeks of time. For this particular process, yes, we took around 5 to 6 weeks, but that included not only the process automation, it includes the various steps like infrastructure setup, analyzing the as-is process, designing the to-be process, designing the bot architecture, client interactions and approvals, developing the process and testing the bots. Right, so it's a complete life cycle that I'm talking about. It may take typically 4 to 6 weeks of such kind of processes.
Thank you for that. I can't see any more questions coming in. Right. I'd like to call the webinar to a halt, and just to reiterate, one, thank you for your time. We know it's precious. Secondly, I hope you've all found this webinar really, really useful, insightful. Please reach out to us if you want to talk about how to start your RPA journey. As you can see, we held the full advisory frameworks, maturity models, and the delivery network and partners. So, and just wanted to say thank you again, and hope you have a good rest of your day wherever you may be. Satendra, anything from you?
Yeah, thanks, Kuldip. Thanks everyone for joining in. I hope this webinar that we have today, I think it would have opened some thoughts. If feel free to connect with me or Kuldip. We have an ecosystem that we'll leverage to deliver engagements. It could be initial discussion to even understand how we deep dive into the assessment, and we would be more than happy to help you understand what sort of assessment happens, how we do it, who are the key stakeholders from your side who will be involved, or whom we would like to get involved with, and so on. Thanks once again for your valuable time, and you have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are globally, and stay safe.
Thank you again. I will be closing the webinar, and thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks Symbots team, and thanks Rishabh team. Great effort, guys. Let's keep the good work going.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
Bye.